Greetings from Rideshare Hartford. I am in a new room, as you can tell. I'm just in the other room of my apartment, so I'm kind of in the same place. Just figured I would try it out here for today. Anyway, this is the second part, or the second video of a two-video series on rideshare insurance. And in today's video, we're going to talk about Connecticut-specific rideshare insurance. In Connecticut, what you need to know, more importantly, what is available, and how to acquire your quotes, and then some things you should consider before purchasing insurance. And if there's any term that I use during this video that you're not sure of or not clear about, I would suggest going to the first video that I made on rideshare insurance and listening to that before listening to this one. And I'll provide the link for that below. So Connecticut has 3 companies that provide rideshare insurance. And luckily, there are one in each category. So one which is rideshare friendly, one which is an endorsement type policy, and one which is a hybrid policy. I'm not really going to get into the 4th type. There's plenty of commercial policies that you could explore here in Connecticut. But more importantly, you don't really need a commercial policy since our premium classes don't require it to drive in those categories. So let's get started. The first rideshare friendly policy is Liberty Mutual. And it's tricky. In Connecticut, there's really not the knowledge base for insurance or rideshare insurance among companies is really not all that high. So what I found with Liberty is a lot of these local offices really don't know their own policy. I had to get to the bottom of it. I actually just called central office and kind of got to the bottom of it, and they in fact are rideshare friendly. You may want to check central office yourself just to make sure. What I would do, I would get your quote one of 2 ways. Either I would just call central office and ask them to direct you to an agent that can help you, or I would contact an office in like Stamford or in New Haven, where rideshare has been around for a little bit longer. Especially Stamford, that's probably your best bet, and they've probably have experience working with rideshare drivers. So that's what I would do for Liberty Mutual. The State Farm is the next one, and State Farm offers a rideshare endorsement in Connecticut, period 1 type thing. And to get your quote for this one, I would contact James Brand in West Hartford. He is great, has great customer service, provides great customer service, will really sit down and give you the time of day, explain the policy to you. And I would hesitate to go to any other agent because, again, kind of like Liberty Mutual, a lot of these agents really don't understand their own products, especially when it comes to rideshare. They don't understand that endorsement. And I've also had a little bit of pushback in terms of people asking me, or in terms of my requesting policy language from both Liberty Mutual and State Farm. But if you go to James Brand's office, they'll read you the policy language, no problem. So that's where I would get my State Farm quote from. And then for Geico, what I would do is I would just call their toll-free number and ask for their rideshare team. So if you have a choice to talk to commercial or talk to personal, talk to commercial, because their hybrid policy runs out of their commercial division. And then they have a specific team within the commercial division that deals specifically with rideshare. And for that reason, Geico is the most knowledgeable when it comes to rideshare insurance. That team is on point. They probably, they have the most up-to-date information regarding rideshare. Their policies are up to date, and so there are the options that we have here in Connecticut, and those are the ways that I would go about getting each of the quotes. Now, a few things to consider when purchasing insurance. I was kind of surprised. I've spoken to some drivers, and they push back on the idea of getting rideshare insurance. And even, in fact, I've even talked to others who've just mentioned, oh yeah, don't do that. Just go and just use your personal policy, and so even some of those within Uber. And so I would not do that. I mean, and if you're in that category where you really just don't want to do this and don't want to make this jump, I would just get a quote from each of the companies and just choose the cheapest one, and then at least you're covered. Because as we talked about, that number one reason is in the event of an accident or just in the event of your private insurance finding out, you don't want to be in a position where you're dropped, and especially if that happens in an accident, because then if you're dropped from your personal policy, then James River will not cover you either. So it's good to at least to have some sort of adequate coverage, even if it's the cheapest one. Then the other thing I would assess is the value of the coverage. So for instance, the a Liberty quote and Geico quote could be comparable in price. Maybe their difference is like a $200 difference or something like that. But that Geico policy has a lot more value and holds a lot more value than the Liberty quote. Because with that Geico quote, or that Geico policy, you're covered through all the periods, and then in terms of the mileage, you can drive a significant number of miles with that Geico policy. Whereas with the Liberty policy, you can drive as many miles as you'd like, but you're getting no coverage when the app is on. And then another thing to consider, I already touched on it, is how many miles you're driving and how frequently you're driving. So if you're the weekend warrior or something like that, that State Farm policy would just be fine. But if you're somebody that's putting in like 60 hours a week doing this, which I would recommend for the long term, but if you are, then the Liberty policy is probably your best bet, because you're not going to be docked for miles. And then the other thing to consider is your commitment to rideshare. I mean, there's some people that are just doing this for a few months or a short period of time. So you're probably going to want to spend a little less. If you're just doing it for a short period of time, your risk is lower. Whereas if you want to make this your career, then you probably should have some more adequate coverage and should probably have some more serious coverage. So anyway, I hope that this video was informative. Oh yes, one last thing. The rideshare guy wrote a wonderful, has a wonderful blog on rideshare insurance, and he has a page for Connecticut-based rideshare insurance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include that in the link in the description below, so you guys can check that out. And please let me know if you have any questions. This is I just feel like this is a topic that is not talked about a whole lot. It's not touched on enough. But it's really important that when we're out there driving, that we're properly insured. It would be horrible to get in an accident and then not to have the proper coverage, or even worse, just not to have coverage at all. And then lastly, I mentioned this in the first video as well, but please consider, as you're watching this video, that I'm not an insurance professional, and so everything I'm mentioning is just sharing. It's not advice. And to also do your own homework. Just use this as a starting point to do your own research and your own homework. Part of the purpose in sharing these videos and doing these videos is to really cut the legwork back a lot. It took me 4 to 6 weeks to really figure all this stuff out, and you shouldn't have to work and sweat it for 4 to 6 weeks to figure out what's going on with rideshare insurance. If you get your quotes, ask your questions about the policy to the insurance companies, and you should be fine. You should be good to go. So hey, if you have any questions, feel free to post, and please like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day, guys.